and then in the end, yeah, it was, great, and the idea was also because it's very multi-ethnic community, and everyone was talking about, what they present, but in a very also like cheerful, friendly way. We had a lot of cookings, we had a lot of dinners, we had a lot of fun, and then what was interesting that I was expecting that they were doing an exhibition of the project that had a lot of series, like a lot of people on different topics, I think later that year, and I was expecting maybe there would be some recipes that the participants would contribute to represent, like their cultural heritage and stuff, but then one thing that they represented that came up something, and that I think comes closer to this methodology that I'm talking and that I use in my work is, working with people and like you have your set ideas on like how things should go and stuff, but you leave room for, changes in the process, and then it was something that came up through that, and there was then one of the participants decided to show the cake that she had made for her kid when they turned 8, I think. So it was like, and she made this complicated cake, like a Great British Bake Off kind of thing, and but like, and then she presented like all the drawings and photos, and it was like a really beautiful display, and like there was this connection with the museum that established, and I was quite pleased and happy with this experience. And then another one that we did was, that connects to this topic, I think, is connected with Tbilisi, which is also stereotypically known as a very, it has always been actually a very multinational, multi-ethnic, people of different ethnic origins and religions have lived together in old Tbilisi, and we were looking at that through one project, and then we decided to do one of the biggest projects. It was called Cooking Imaginations, Tbilisi Migrant Stories. And it dealt with people, it was involving people and also dealing with migration topic of, the project was in 2014, so it was about 10 years before that, like that decade, because a lot of people came to live in Tbilisi, but then, there was not much exchange with hosts, like within the communities, and then it was people from also all around the world. So we wanted to touch upon different topics of migration, like it's legal issues that people are experiencing, but also like cultural, social, and then it turned out that there were like much more problems, that nobody was really working on this topic. It was sort of like a lot of work, but it was also very anthropological in the terms of like, engaging and working with people to develop, like to get the recipes, to take the stories. It had a lot of components. I won't bother you with all of this, but if anyone's interested, I'm happy to send you more material and talk more about it after. But 4 of the main events that we did as part of the cooking was public cooking events. So we would choose the location together with the people we were working with. We would prepare publications about their story of migration and recipes beforehand, and then we would cook food where they would be in their neighborhood or somewhere else, and then there's like a lot of exchange, and suddenly people are friendly because everyone wants to get involved, because of course we all know something about food and want to do something. And we're working with a group of Indian students, because there are a lot of students coming from India to study in Georgia. And it was, their event was planned for October, and there was this, I think like we all came to this idea somehow, and they actually, one of them wanted to do it. There's a festival called Tbilisoto, which is the Days of Tbilisi. So it's usually end of October. If you look at it, you would think it's a very festival with long tradition. It was actually, I think, started in '79 on this fictitious 1500 birthday of Tbilisi, and then its conception was a totally different thing. I'm talking about a lot of stuff now. Let me get focused again. So. It's a lot of food, it's a lot of cooking, and it took a very nationalistic turn in the end, that's my point. And it's usually a lot of like chinkali, these dumplings, or like chali, this sort of like barbecue, that the city is basically in like smoke, you can smell it everywhere. It's a fun thing, there's concerts, there's stuff. And then we were like, why don't we do the Indian cooking event as part of the festival? We approached the city hall. They said yes, they gave us the booth, we went with our booth, and we cooked, and it was really great experience, really a lot of people coming. We didn't really have a lot of like one-to-one contact, because it's like a really busy festival, but it was good that there were publications that people could take, and there was, it was a lot of people. And then one of my friends was coming from the other side, and then it was like, I could smell curry all the way across the bridge, because it's like a very specific smell as well. And we're like, I guess it changed something in terms of, also the aroma in the city and stuff. But I think it was like really important to show that the city, that when you're representing city, it's not just this, it's not just the thing you're used to. There's other people who are part of the city who need equal representation and need voices to do that. And what happened was very interesting. Next year on the festival, these organizers themselves, they brought in a lot of restaurants that are different, like Chinese restaurant or associated with different countries and cultures, which was great echo from our intervention, I would say. However, of course, the approach was very different. It was more fancy restaurants and not probably affordable for a lot of people to go, so people went for cheaper dumpling options still. But yeah, I think this is very important to do that, to involve people and to, and why this comes back to nationalism that I was talking about in the beginning, to come up to that and wrap it up like a dumpling, because my feeling is all around now with my words, when it gets through this very nationalistic narrative, it usually actually tends to absorb a lot from the diversity around, and then it turns to sort of like unify all this, and then within this usually, nationalistic, white, patriarchal, heterosexual narrative, a lot of people tend to be left out, and then tend to be not even misrepresented, but even underrepresented or not represented at all. And then when you're not represented as part of the culture, you don't probably feel like part of the culture, so then the whole set of problems comes from that. So I think this kind of approach through food or other things is helpful, and yeah, it's good to ask here and then somehow integrate. Thanks.
You sound hungry. You said about so lot of things, dumb things in Kali. Yes, through food and of course through education, and I agree with the data that both food, education and other spheres can be much more wide than only food or education, because we can use them much more. We can make them much bigger instruments than they are themselves. So if we speak about education, I don't tell about everybody, or I will tell only about us, because really there are thousands of us now, and everybody is doing everything he or she can for our victory. So I will just tell about our sense, and everybody start already. Yes. What we were doing, yes. So we always try to show that education is much not only about lessons. I don't know how homeworks for both teachers and kids, because teachers are like kids, frankly speaking, and when they come to our center for some teacher training, if they are like they come by list from our Department of Education, they think that we are some new center that will make them suffer, like in governmental education. So they also don't want to come to study like kids. And we want to show them that education can be interesting, can be actual, can be beautiful, can be comfortable. And of course we use different instruments for that. One of them, we made such puzzle. It's an echo puzzle about Kharkiv and Kharkiv region, and we managed to form it in January and present it to everybody whom we want to do it, and already now I can say that it will be an interesting puzzle, because it's like puzzle of places that don't exist anymore, because almost all of them are already destroyed and bombed. Like, for example, one of the biggest farm, made excursions to the places. Also a snail farm, one of the biggest in the Europe. Also museums of IT, and there are more than it was part of 100 places, and almost all of them don't exist already. I hope that we will rebuild something, or we will create a new one, of course. Also, 2 weeks ago, we go for almost 2 months in Europe with our press tour. Actually, it's cultural diplomacy because we go in 20 cities in 7 countries, from Poland to Portugal and back. We made events devoted to education, to Kharkiv, to war in Ukraine, and invited people, both foreigners and Ukrainians, and actually collected money for pick-up for Kherson direction. Also it's like it's not only education, but it's also education, because we wanted to focus attention of people about schools, about universities in Ukraine now, about the fact that, for example, in Kharkiv, more than 70% of schools are already destroyed by Russian troops, and there are a lot of interesting statistics. I won't tell them it now, but the fact is. For example, we created a new program of education for kids of 3, 4, 5, 6 years, and its focus also was new civic education to them, and more than Ukraine in this program for them. We don't tell them about such stereotypes that were used in Soviet Union about Ukraine. We give them modern examples of our startups, of our victories in sport, in art, in science, in the army now. We want them to show that Ukraine is actual, as modern, as strong, and you can be realized in this country now. For this, we also created this program for 2 years, and now, even private schools and kindergartens want to buy it because really it was a problem in Ukraine with this. Maybe you know such things, Sharabarshina. I think you can understand. Our program doesn't consist of that. Really, we try to do it with all resources and all formats we can. Just our fantasy, and nothing is impossible. So I don't remember the track. Transliteration, yes. Yes, it's an important question. It's the topic of my dissertation. Ukrainian language transliteration, and really it's important. Of course, there are already some initiatives of Guardian and of British embassy and US also supported it, but nevertheless, very often in the internet and people we meet this Kiev, Odessa with 2S, Chernobyl, Kharkov, Nikolai, Lviv or Lvov, a lot of different kinds of our geographical names, and also with Alim we already spoke that we need to create some open wide discussion with the Minister of Foreign Affairs and with scientists and linguistic scientists to create really normal parallel alphabet for Ukrainian language and give it to other countries to use it, and in this case to solve this problem. But every person can correct this itself also. Yes, so I mean, yeah. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I would also like to add on shortly on what you're doing in Kharkiv, Irina. I think that it is so crucial what you say, that your mission is that Ukrainians fall in love with Ukraine. And this is where we need to start, to make the country attractive to the people who travel around. Because, like, it's not a question how to not be that annoying person always correcting stuff about your country, but why to be this annoying person? Why to stand up and say, it's not Kiev, it's Kiev. It's, yeah, we have more than just a Hinkali. We are not cute, we are brave. Like, why should you speak up? And yeah, it's a lot of work inside before people actually take that courage and time and yeah, start being the ambassadors of their culture. And we have to just accept that we are these ambassadors, even if we don't want to be them. Then it's like if we are silent when stuff is incorrect, then yeah, it means it will spread, it will continue again and again. And sure, every should choose their battles. Not each battle is our battle, and we need to have our front. We have our fights on, but still it needs some inclusion and some instruments which all the people can unite around when doing cultural diplomacy all together. Yeah, I would like to open the Q&A session. Are there any questions? Yes, I already see one question.
Thank you. I have a question regarding cultural ambassadors. If we watch social media, whether it is in German language or in English, even before the February 23rd, 24th, there has been many migrants from Eastern Europe who make parodies on stereotypes on how people from Ukraine are, how people from Russia are, how people from the USSR are, and they grow their entertainment platforms based on these stereotypes of the post-Soviet Slavic squat, alcohol drinking people. And so my question is, these people are also ambassadors of our cultures in a way, a collective post-Soviet culture or individual cultures. My question is, how do we approach these people who use the stereotypes as their platform? How do we engage into a dialogue with them or with the people who follow their platforms? How do we combat these stereotypes while not alienating these people from overall
Question before you have are these people making jokes about from there, or are these people who don't represent what they're talking about?
So, people who I have in mind while asking this question are migrants from these cultures. So, for example, say Eastern European migrants in Germany who can also speak their native languages, but they, in German, use these stereotypes to create a platform and earn money with this.
Here I maybe can agree with, I don't know what is your name, but this who talked about dialogue. Yeah, my also opinion that we need to create a new discourse and not to be engaged in this dialogue because it's not absolutely productive when it is not when it's not about the governmental safety. If it's already like in Ukraine now, of course, already public authority will have to deal with it. Yes, but if it's just jokes, so I think that we can create more something better, something more strong, something more interesting, and explain people and motivate them to choose.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that, and the reason I asked you who these people, I mean, I don't know also how good their shows are or who they are, but and honestly, I have also personally found myself being annoyed sometimes when people would, like make comments about things like that and stuff. However, I think that if a person, and I think it's also a tool in comedy, it's called self-depreciation or something like this. I mean, first of all, it's comedy. It's a joke. And it can have many different purposes, but if it's also well made, it's actually combating the stereotype by owning it, but they have to have good skills to do it. I don't think everyone can do it. Sometimes they can come as annoying, I don't understand it. What can you do about them? I don't think you can do anything, freedom of speech. And it's, jokes, and I mean, unless, there's hate speech or like they're offending somebody directly and stuff, but I think there's a bit different things when it's, again, a comedy, not a... Unfortunately, we live in a world where people say stuff like that who are not in comedy, but are like, in serious public positions, and they talk about it in talk shows, and they make comments like that, and that goes, unpunished or without consequences and stuff. But I think, yeah, if it's through comedy and stand-up and stuff, it's about, and if it's the person, if it's their experience, they are allowed to talk about it. They might actually be going against it by presenting it, especially if they present it in another country. And it also might be a healing process if it's a traumatic experience, because a lot of people have done it through this. And I mean, imagine if everything was so serious when we talked about it. Like sometimes humor is needed, sometimes comedy is needed to just deal with it because it's bad enough. Yeah, I think. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any more questions? No? Okay. Okay, then I think it's time not to talk about food, but to do to deal with that. Yeah. There was a presentation. Yeah, you're Georgian, you have to cook. You're Ukrainian, you have to